Wyoming Territory, 1878. The town of Silver Creek sat nestled between rolling grasslands and the jagged Rocky Mountains like a tarnished coin in God's pocket. Dust swirled through streets lined with false front buildings where the promise of civilization fought daily against the wildness that pressed in from all sides. In this unforgiving frontier, Xavier Whitaker believed one truth above all others. The West was no place for sentiment. A man survived by keeping his head down, his guns loaded, and his heart locked tight. At 25, Xavier had already amassed a fortune that would have shocked the townsfolk who knew him only as the quiet, reserved owner of the modest Circle W ranch outside town. His unassuming demeanor and simple clothes gave no hint of the cattle empire he'd quietly built across 3 territories or the mining interests that filled his accounts in banks as far away as San Francisco. Xavier preferred it that way. Wealth attracted trouble, and in his experience, so did people. A man needs nothing but his land, his horse, and enough sense to keep both, he often told his foreman, the only person who knew the true extent of Xavier's holdings. His ranch house stood isolated on a rise overlooking lush grazing lands, large enough for comfort but lacking any ostentatious touches that might betray his means. He'd built it with his own hands, each nail hammered with the conviction that he needed no one. The emptiness of the dining table, the silence of the rooms, these were small prices to pay for independence. On this particular September morning, Xavier rode into Silver Creek for supplies, his tall frame and broad shoulders cutting an imposing figure despite his youth. Women noticed his striking features, the strong jawline dusted with light stubble, piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing, and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his plain cotton shirt. But Xavier had long since trained himself not to notice their glances. Attachment was weakness, and weakness got people killed out here where law was thin and danger constant. As he tied his chestnut gelding outside the general store, shouting erupted from across the street. A crowd had gathered outside Holden's mercantile, and at its center stood a woman Xavier had seen around town a few times, the young widow Zeller, if he recalled correctly. "We don't extend credit to your kind," Thaddeus Holden's voice carried across the street. "Your husband left you with nothing but debts and a worthless piece of land. Best sell what you can and move back east where you belong." The woman stood rigid, clutching a small list in one hand. Even from a distance, Xavier could see the flush of humiliation on her face, the proud tilt of her chin as she fought to maintain her dignity. "My farm will yield a harvest within weeks, Mr. Holden. I'm simply asking for the same consideration you extend to other customers." "Other customers pay their bills," Holden sneered. "Everyone knows Harper Zeller can't make that farm work alone. A woman has no business trying to run land out here." Xavier found himself moving across the street before he'd made any conscious decision to intervene. Something about the woman's quiet determination stirred something in him. Admiration, perhaps, or recognition of a similar stubborn pride. Harper Zeller was younger than he'd realized. No more than 22, he guessed. Her chestnut brown hair was pulled back in a simple knot, tendrils escaping to frame a face that bore the subtle marks of hard work and worry. Her dress, though faded and mended in places, was clean and pressed, the blue calico complementing eyes the color of a mountain lake at dusk. Beautiful, yes, but it was the resolute set of her mouth that truly caught his attention. "Mr. Holden," Xavier said, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the gathering crowd. "I'll stand for Mrs. Zeller's account." All eyes turned to him. Harper Zeller's widened in surprise, then narrowed with wounded pride. "I don't need charity, sir," she said quietly, each word precise and firm. "It's not charity. It's an investment." Xavier met her gaze steadily. "I've seen your land. Good soil. What you need are supplies to make it through to harvest, correct?" Harper hesitated, clearly torn between necessity and pride. "My husband believed in that land. I intend to prove him right." "Then let me advance what you need. You can repay when your crops come in." Xavier turned to Holden, whose expression had shifted from contempt to careful deference. Everyone in town knew Xavier paid his debts promptly and in full. "Put Mrs. Zeller's purchases on my account, Holden. Whatever she needs." The incident lasted barely 5 minutes, but as Xavier returned to his errands, he couldn't shake the memory of Harper Zeller's face. The flash of gratitude quickly masked by determination, the quiet, "Thank you," Mr. Whitaker, that had followed him as he turned away. Something about her stubborn self-reliance resonated with him in ways he found deeply unsettling. The next morning, Xavier found himself riding toward the Zeller farm, telling himself he merely wanted to assess the investment he'd made. The modest homestead sat on 20 acres of promising land, the cabin small but sturdy. As he approached, he spotted Harper in the field, struggling with a plow that was clearly too heavy for her slight frame. He dismounted without announcing himself, took the handles from her startled hands, and said simply, "Show me what needs doing." Harper stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of one work-roughened hand. "Mr. Whitaker, I appreciate yesterday's kindness, but I don't require supervision." "Not supervising. Helping." Xavier adjusted the plow depth. "This land needs proper braking before winter. You won't manage it alone." "I've been managing for 6 months since Thomas died," she countered, those remarkable eyes flashing. "I don't need a man to rescue me." Xavier found himself smiling, a rare enough occurrence that it felt strange on his face. "I believe you, Mrs. Zeller. But even the strongest need help occasionally. Consider it payment for the supplies." "My husband left debts, not charity cases," she said, but her tone had softened. After a moment's consideration, she pointed toward the northern edge of the field. "That section needs braking today if I'm to plant winter wheat." For hours they worked side by side, speaking little but falling into an efficient rhythm. Harper was stronger than her delicate appearance suggested, and smarter about farming than many men Xavier had met. As the sun climbed higher, he found himself watching her, the competent movement of her hands, the intelligent questions she asked about crop rotation, the quiet determination that drove her despite obvious exhaustion. By late afternoon, Xavier had learned Harper had come west with her husband Thomas just a year earlier, full of dreams for their future. 6 months ago, Thomas had died of pneumonia, leaving Harper alone on land he'd barely begun to tame, with debts to the bank and little knowledge of farming beyond what she'd gleaned from books. "Why stay?" Xavier asked as they paused for water. Most widows would have returned to family. Harper's expression tightened. "I have no family to return to. And this land." She gestured to the fields around them. "Thomas believed in it enough to stake our future here. I won't abandon that dream because the path grew harder." Xavier nodded, understanding completely. "The West tests what we're made of." "Yes," she agreed, studying him with those perceptive eyes. "Though I suspect it's tested you less than most, Mr. Whitaker." The observation, too close to truths he kept hidden, made him uncomfortable. "I should go? I'll send one of my hands tomorrow to help finish the plowing." "That isn't necessary. An investment requires proper cultivation, Mrs. Zeller." He tipped his hat and mounted his horse, inexplicably eager to escape her clear-eyed assessment of him. "Harper," she called as he turned to leave. "If you're going to plow my fields, you might as well use my given name." He hesitated, then nodded. "Xavier," he offered in return, and rode away wondering why the exchange felt significant. Over the following weeks, Xavier found himself drawn repeatedly to the Zeller farm. What began as occasional help with heavy tasks evolved into regular visits. He told himself it was merely to protect his investment, but the excuse grew thinner each time Harper's face brightened at his arrival. On a crisp October afternoon, Xavier arrived to find Harper on her knees in the small kitchen garden, her hair falling loose from its pins as she harvested the last vegetables before frost. She smiled when she saw him, a genuine warmth that sent an unfamiliar sensation through his chest. "You're becoming a fixture, Xavier Whitaker," she teased, rising to her feet with a basket of root vegetables. "People will talk." "Let them," he replied, surprising himself with his own indifference to town gossip. "I brought seed for spring planting. And this." He handed her a small book on fruit cultivation. "For those apple saplings we discussed." She took the book, her fingers brushing his, and Xavier found himself noticing the small details of her face, the light dusting of freckles across her nose, the slight upward tilt of her eyes when she smiled. "Thank you." Harper studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Though I wonder why the owner of Circle W Ranch takes such interest in my modest farm." "Your land has potential," he said, the safe answer. Harper laughed, the sound unexpectedly musical. "My land is 20 rocky acres that barely sustains one woman." "Your interest confounds me, Xavier." The directness of her statement left him momentarily speechless. Why did he continue returning? The question had haunted his solitary evenings at the ranch house that suddenly seemed too large, too empty. Perhaps I enjoy the company, he finally admitted, the closest he could come to acknowledging the truth taking shape within him. Harper's smile softened. Then stay for supper. It's only stew, but there's plenty. That evening marked a shift. Seated at Harper's small table, discussing books they'd read and places they hoped to see, Xavier felt something loosen in his chest, a constriction he hadn't even recognized until it began to ease. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease, punctuated by laughter and moments of comfortable silence. As weeks passed, Xavier found himself sharing more than he had with anyone. Stories of his childhood in Boston, his journey west at 17, the years of hard work that had built his fortune. He omitted only the extent of his wealth, an omission that grew increasingly uncomfortable as his feelings for Harper deepened. By early December, Xavier knew with absolute certainty that he had fallen in love with Harper Zeller. The realization terrified him. Love meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant risk. Every night he rode back to his empty ranch house resolved to protect himself by staying away, and every morning found him inventing new reasons to return to her. The Winter Market Festival brought matters to a head. Xavier had arranged to meet Harper in town, where she planned to sell preserves and handcrafts to earn extra money for the winter months. As he approached the town square, he overheard voices from behind the mercantile. "Your time's running out, Mrs. Zeller." The voice belonged to Silas Garrett, the banker. "That loan comes due next month. Without your husband's signature, I'm afraid I must insist on full payment." "My husband signed those papers," Harper replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. "His death doesn't invalidate that agreement." "The agreement was for 5 years," Garrett countered smoothly. "But as a widow unable to work the land properly, well, the bank must protect its interests. Unless you find yourself another husband willing to take on the debt, I'll have no choice but to foreclose after the new year." Xavier stepped around the corner, cold fury building in his chest. "Is there a problem here, Harper?" Garrett's expression shifted instantly from predatory to obsequious. "Mr. Whitaker, just a private business discussion with Mrs. Zeller. About a loan my husband and I took to purchase our land," Harper explained, her cheeks flushed with anger and humiliation. "Apparently, as a mere woman, I'm no longer considered capable of honoring that agreement." "I see." Xavier's voice was deceptively calm. "And what is the outstanding amount, Mr. Garrett?" The banker named a sum that represented a fraction of what Xavier spent on cattle feed in a month. "I'll cover it," Xavier said flatly. "No." Harper's response was immediate and firm. "I won't trade one man's charity for another's. That land is mine, earned with my husband's life and my own sweat. I'll find another way." She walked away, back straight, and head high despite the tears Xavier could see threatening. He followed her to the edge of town, catching her arm gently. "Harper, wait. This isn't charity." "Then what is it?" she demanded, finally allowing her composure to crack. "What is any of this, Xavier? Why have you spent months helping a woman whose farm barely supports herself? What do you want from me?" The question hung between them, demanding truth Xavier had avoided even in his own thoughts. "I want you," he said simply. "Not your land. Not repayment. You. Your smile when I arrive. Your thoughts on books we've read. Your determination that puts most men to shame." He took a deep breath. "I want to build something with you, Harper." She stared at him, tears spilling over. "I have nothing to offer a man like you." "You have everything I need," he countered, taking her hands in his. "And there are things about me you should know." There in the winter sunlight, Xavier told Harper the truth he'd hidden from everyone in Silver Creek, that the modest Circle W was merely the visible portion of holdings that stretched across 3 territories, that his cattle operations and mining investments had made him one of the wealthiest men in the territory. Harper listened in silence, her expression transitioning from shock to something approaching anger. "Why hide such success? And why tell me now?" "I hide it because wealth attracts trouble and false friends," Xavier explained. "I tell you now because I want no secrets between us. Because he hesitated, then committed himself to the most dangerous truth of all. Because I love you, Harper Zeller. And if you'll have me, I want to marry you." Harper stepped back, shaking her head. "I need time, Xavier. This is too much." He nodded, respecting her need to process everything. "Take whatever time you need. My feelings won't change." The following days were the longest of Xavier's life. He stayed away from Harper's farm, giving her the space she'd requested, but every hour of separation felt like physical pain. He threw himself into ranch work, exhausting himself with physical labor that did nothing to quiet his mind. On the 5th day, a winter storm blew in from the mountains, bringing howling winds and driving snow. Xavier paced his ranch house, worry for Harper gnawing at him. Her cabin was sturdy but old, her wood supply limited. As darkness fell and the storm intensified, he could bear it no longer. He saddled his strongest horse, loaded supplies, and rode out into the blizzard, guided more by instinct than vision as snow obliterated familiar landmarks. The journey that normally took an hour stretched to 3 as he fought through drifts and wind that threatened to unseat him. When he finally reached Harper's farm, the cabin was dark. Heart pounding with fear, Xavier pounded on the door, calling her name over the howl of the storm. The door opened to reveal Harper wrapped in blankets, her face pale in the light of a single candle. "Xavier? My God, you could have died in this storm. I had to make sure you were safe," he said, stamping snow from his boots as he entered. The cabin was freezing, the fire down to embers. "Your wood supply? Gone," she admitted. "I was trying to conserve the last logs." Xavier immediately set to work rebuilding the fire with what he'd strapped to his saddle, his movements efficient despite his exhaustion. As warmth began to return to the cabin, he turned to find Harper watching him with an unreadable expression. "You rode through a blizzard to check on me," she said, as if testing the words for their reality. "I would ride through worse to reach you," he replied simply. Harper moved toward him slowly. "I've been thinking about what you told me. About your wealth, your proposal." She took a deep breath. "At first, I was angry. I felt deceived, as though our entire friendship was built on false pretenses." Xavier's heart sank, but he nodded. "I understand." "No, you don't," Harper continued. "Because then I realized something important. Wealthy or not, you're the same man who spent hours helping me plow fields, who discussed books with me over simple stew, who saw value in me when the town saw only a burden." She reached for his hand. "The money changes nothing about who you are, or what I feel for you." Xavier felt hope rise cautiously. "And what do you feel?" "That I love you," Harper said, her voice gaining strength. "That I was afraid to admit it because I've already lost one future. That your proposal terrifies me because I want it too much." Xavier pulled her gently into his arms. "Then be terrified with me, Harper Zeller. Because a life without you terrifies me more than anything." Their first kiss, there in the firelight as the blizzard raged outside, felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. They married on New Year's Day, 1879, in the Silver Creek Church. The town that had once shunned Harper watched in shock as Xavier Whitaker, now revealed as one of the territory's wealthiest ranchers, proudly took the struggling widow as his bride. Harper wore a simple gown of ivory silk, her chestnut hair adorned with winter roses Xavier had specially imported from Denver. Their vows, spoken clearly despite the emotion evident in both their voices, spoke not of obedience or servitude, but of partnership, respect, and a love forged through genuine understanding. "I take you as my partner in all things," Xavier promised, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "Your dreams will be my dreams, your battles my battles." "I take you as my companion on life's journey," Harper responded, offering not submission but strength, not dependence but partnership. Banker Garrett watched from the back pew, his earlier schemes to acquire Harper's land now rendered futile. Thaddeus Holden, who had once refused Harper credit, presented the couple with an elaborate wedding gift and assured them of his long-standing admiration for them both. Xavier and Harper moved into Xavier's ranch house, which soon transformed under Harper's touch from a sparse bachelor's residence to a true home. The small farm Harper had fought so hard to maintain became an experimental garden where she developed hardier strains of wheat and vegetables suited to Wyoming's harsh climate. As spring bloomed across the territory, Harper stood on the porch of their home, watching Xavier return from the range. She placed a hand on her still flat stomach, anticipation building as she prepared to share news of the child that would arrive before winter. Xavier dismounted and climbed the steps to her side, his face lighting with the smile he now wore easily and often. "What is you looking so pleased with yourself, Mrs. Whitaker?" Harper took his hand and placed it against her abdomen. Life finds a way to grow even in the harshest conditions, with enough love and care. Understanding dawned in Xavier's eyes, followed by wonder and then fierce joy. He lifted her gently, spinning her in a circle before setting her carefully back on her feet. "Are you happy?" she asked, though his expression had already answered. "I spent years believing the frontier allowed no room for love," Xavier said, drawing her close. That vulnerability was weakness, that a man survived by standing alone. He placed his hand again on her stomach, where their child grew. "You taught me the truth. We don't merely survive alone, Harper. Together, we thrive." As the Wyoming sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Xavier and Harper Whitaker stood together on the porch of the home they had created. Not just a house, but a sanctuary built on mutual respect and genuine love. The vast western landscape stretched before them, no longer a place of isolation but a canvas for the future they would build together. For Xavier, who had once believed the frontier demanded emotional solitude, and Harper, who had feared she would never find belonging after loss, their greatest discovery was this. True strength came not from standing alone against the wilderness, but from joining hands to face it together.